hello, very beautiful community. I've been away for a day or two from the chat channel, and I thought I'd do a health update because I'm at the 9-month point of not being able to stand. Before I say another word, let me say that there are people in this community who are struggling a lot, including people who are struggling with acute chronic illness, and we think of them. And of course, in the political context, at least as far as Europe is concerned, because there's so much difficult stuff happening all over the world, but as far as Europe is concerned, right now we're thinking of Ukrainians, many of whom are sitting without heating, without water, without electricity, in temperatures of -10 and colder because of the misconduct of the tyrant in the Kremlin. And if you're in Ukraine and you are also acutely, chronically ill or dependent on oxygen, you're going to have an extremely vulnerability-inducing time. You know, you could end up sitting in a building where the heating is broken in a way that is realistically not going to be fixable until next winter. So, let me say a little bit about why I've been away from the chat channel for a couple of days on this occasion. I went for an appointment to get a blue badge, which is a disabled parking permit. I don't drive, but my partner does. And I thought that I could roll down the street, up and down the pavement, up and down the pavement for 15 minutes one way and then 15 minutes back. And it didn't quite go like that. I managed to get there. It was a 15-minute trip down the pavement, but by the time I was there, I was in a state that reminded me of moments in hospital. I spent a month in hospital around April, May, when I needed to call the doctors in to stabilize me with some medical interventions and high oxygen. Felt I was drifting away and suffocating in the middle of some strange corner of East London. My partner carried a small oxygen machine with us, and I sort of laid down and went on that outside this local town hall, and just wasn't doing anything. But eventually, little by little, it began to at least partly stabilize me, and then I had my little interview, and then I had another session outside stabilizing, and then in 5-minute installments I rolled back. But on top of all of my ME symptoms and my long COVID microvascular symptoms, I have an additional foot on my chest and a difficulty to breathe in and a kind of a sleep rate of about 20% in the last 3 nights. And it's progressed down, not up, as a result of that exertion. So that's a kind of incapacity, at least on a bad day, to travel in a wheelchair. We talk about the tragedy of being wheelchair bound, but actually being wheelchair bound, if you can be, in relative terms at least, is actually something that's liberating. I want to say that for a lot of people, their long COVID will be essentially indistinguishable from ME, and the two tags can be used interchangeably. I'm not one of these people. For me, my post-COVID or my long COVID is a separate condition because I've got my ME, but I've also got this microvascular damage that I didn't have before, and it's that's stopped me from standing. It's that stopped me from making this trip to the local town hall for my interview. I have stabilized a bit over the past 9 months since I lost my ability to stand in the horizontal position, although I'm not stable right now. But I have not really improved at all. In fact, I've got worse when it comes to verticalization. So any attempt to even semi-stand for a second, and I'm not exaggerating, and semi-stand is actually pushing it because I really mean sitting on the bed with legs firmly planted on the ground, can create a crisis that lasts 2 or 3 days. So it's not that I can't stand because I try and bad things begin to happen, so I have to stop. It's that even if I edge toward trying, I'm going to be essentially gasping and suffocating for 3 days. That's a pretty unique situation. All the medications I'm taking in insufficiently high doses because of my reactivity to the medication. And that's one of the problems with both long COVID and ME, that you become too unstable to tolerate the relevant doses of meds that have a chance, but not a guarantee of helping. And there's only one major UK specialist who I haven't seen yet, but I'm going to be seeing her soon. On top of that, I'm seeing a couple of people internationally, so I have a pretty sophisticated medical team around me, but on some measures, the measure of verticalization in particular, I haven't improved. On others, I have, when it comes to moving around in bed in a horizontal position. I do that more stably. Now, how am I coping with this? Well, I think you know, because I'm putting this on the main channel, sorry, on the chat channel, not on the Me Diary channel. I'm coping extremely well. I don't have much time to process what's happened to me because I feel too tense or too overwhelmed by the difficulty of the symptoms that I'm feeling, because you need a modicum of sort of physical stability to begin processing things emotionally. I remain external and it remains effortless for me to give, and you can see that on the chat channel, so I've still got you. I haven't got you if you want to race me, do a sprint race, or a cartwheel. I haven't got you there, but when it comes to things that are not physical activity, I've got you. How does this change? Does this stay the same? Does this get worse? Do we know? The natural recovery rate back to previous baseline from the sort of thing I'm going through is very low. Maybe you can expect some incremental improvement, but fundamentally, most people in a sort of predicament that I'm in need interventions to shift them. And some people have been shifted by interventions, but other people don't tolerate the interventions or aren't well enough for some of the interventions. So this is a paradoxical predicament. Even more big picture, what we need is more research, because we're talking tens of millions of people globally who have ME, and lots of papers indicate that as far as suffering and disability goes, it's as disabling as any condition that is fairly common on Earth, apart from terminal conditions a few days out from death. So it's at an unfathomable level of disability, to the point that even people who have ME and long COVID and watch me have no idea how sick I am, let alone people who don't understand acute chronic illness. And when I say don't understand, it's the tendency in our culture to think of acute chronic illness as something you model on a person who is feeling unwell while being otherwise well, right? So you model the way you talk to chronically ill people on health optimization, right? Have you tried the carnivore diet, right? Well, that's a conceptual mistake, and it's partly connected with a couple of prejudices in our culture. One of them is that we really struggle to believe something unless it's visible. And one of the problems with chronic illness is that when you see somebody like me on the screen, you're seeing me in the top 4% of my performance, let's say. Right? You're not seeing what the rest of it is like. Funnily enough, if I were less sick, I would probably run a more regular diary on the Vlad diary channel. So, relative to the numbers of people who are sick and to the severity of the sickness, research in ME is shockingly close to zero, right? I mean, if you imagine the graph the size of the screen, ME funding will be here, and funding for all the other major health conditions will be sort of between here and here. So it's a kind of an extreme exponential outlier. Funding for long COVID is better, but it's still very low relative to other conditions of equivalent importance. And we still have a real conceptual difficulty in the field because too much research is replicating work that's already been done, and too much research is focused on establishing the complex physiological reality of the condition rather than focusing on what we can do about it. There's a lot of really excellent research too, but the cumulative research environment in long COVID is still wonky and is constrained by very, very limited funds. So, to get all of these people to change, to improve, we're going to have to do an external intervention. It would be economically rational to do that because we're losing more money on the whole in the economy, and then we're gaining by ignoring these people if you take ethics and solidarity and rights out of the question. But that's not how politics works, right? So we need more funding, which would generate an intervention, which would then return these people to society. But let me now make one connection between chronic illness and wider politics. Currently in the West, there is no exclusion of citizens that is commensurate with the exclusion that folks with acute chronic illness face. They're people who are often abandoned by the state. They're often people to whom hospitals pose a danger. I mean, we've got a hospital in the news right now, not far from here, that is refusing to administer food correctly to an ME patient and endangering their life. So, what this shows is that the most progressive societies we've ever had in human history, at the level of the idea that there is a safety net, which means that we protect people from the worst elements of sheer bad luck, that even the most progressive societies tolerate disconcertingly well a couple of % of the population being radically excluded from participation with society, and needlessly so, because obviously we could fix that by investing in funds to help them get better. But unfortunately, this is a model for other modes of exclusion to come. As our democracies deteriorate, we're going to run through these tests, right? How many people and what kind of people can we tolerate being excluded from remotely fair participation in society, with the rest of society being able to look the other way and simply go on. Obviously, that can never become a majority, but one would be shocked by how high that number can go. The number of the, if you like, exclusion via aversion of one's gaze. That's all I've got for today. I'm working as best I can on my health situation to be back with you, because I know that a lot of calamitification is going on in the world, from Ukraine to Iran to parts of the world we never mention to authoritarian destabilization in the United States. So we'll be together soon. Lots of love.